What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
What is up, Fantasy Points? We are back with the DFS cage match number 2 on the Fantasy Points channel. For those of you who did not catch last week, this is going to be a weekly show on Wednesday evenings. Myself and Jake are going to be here every Wednesday. I'm Neil Orfield at PlayerQDFS on Twitter. He's below me is Jake Tribbey at Jake Tribbey on Twitter. And our guest this week, we're going to have a rotating third guest every week. This week is Chris Spags, who you can find on Twitter at Chris Spags. That's pretty easy. All of us just have our names Spags is not really Spags' full last name, but pretty close. Our names.
Kayfabe, brother.
That's right. So excited to be here with you. We're, of course, we're going to be playing for charity. Just give you an idea of how this works. We are going to be drafting teams on DraftKings against each other, not in like an official draft, but we're not going to be able to take each other's players. Each of us will draft a team, and we each choose a charity each week. At the end of the year, the winning charity, Fantasy Points, is going to give $100 to the charity of the winning player's choice. So everybody picks a charity each week, and the winning charity is going to get $100. Last week, that was what you see on the screen. Brothers of Paterson, New Jersey. It might be Patterson. This was Scott Barrett's charity. Scott came in and beat Jake and I in our game as the guest, came in and beat us. Brothers of Patterson. Purpose to educate and uplift the men in our community and let the city know that there are men in our community who care. Congrats to Brothers of Patterson winning $100 through Fantasy Points last week. Congrats to Scott Barrett for getting the W. I think it was a little bit fraudulent. I think my team should have won that one, but got to give it to Scott. He pulled out the W last week. But we have Jake and I are going to be doing the same charities because we didn't win. So we're going to stick to the charities that we did last week. Mine being Walk to Defeat ALS. This is for Team Mac. This is Trey's friend's father is part of this organization. They've been really good to producer Trey's friend's father. So Trey recommended this one as just an organization that he knows does great work because he knows people who have received the benefit of this organization. So the ALS Association would be the $100 winner if I win. Jake, you're doing the same. Friends of North Augusta Animals. Can you remind people why you chose this charity?
Yeah, it's a great charity for some of the local animals here in Augusta, helping animals get adopted. They also have a great catch, neuter, and release program for stray cats. And like I mentioned last week, I am pretty sure they caught, neutered, and released the cat that then showed up at my doorstep that me and my girlfriend adopted. So big fan of this charity and really hope I can get them $100 this week.
Very nice. And Spags, I think yours looks like it might be pretty similar. Animalhaven.org is your chosen charity. Can you tell me a little bit about this one?
Yes, it's actually a charity or a shelter that I've gotten my dog from, Penny, who's still with us. Who's now 14 years old and change. Wow. Going to be 15 if she somehow makes it the next year, which is looking good. But, a great run with her overall. And I think that's the thing that I've always been a big fan of. We read my kid, my 2-year-old Luca, a book every day about shelter dogs. So a shelter in New York that I got my beloved pet from that does a good job in Soho in New York. If you're there, if you want to go somewhere that's bougie, but still a no-kill shelter.
Yeah, I got to say that was probably the first one that came to my mind was also the rescue that we got my dog from. That'll definitely be mine at some point as well. All animal lovers on the show today. So Spags, before we get into the rest of this, this is, you're the guest on the show. I got to ask you, how are you doing? How is your transition into the NFL season going? For those who don't know Spags, he's one of the most consistent best ball streamers throughout the summer, doing best ball streaming content constantly on his own channel. Now doing some DFS content. How are things going, Spags?
It's good. I mean, for me, the main rhythm that I've had since Football Outsiders shut down is I started streaming on Splash Play 5 days a week. Actually ended up upping that in season here I'm calling it in season during best ball drafting season, which for guys like me and Neil, I think I don't know if you're on the same page, Jake, but like best ball season at that point, it's like in August, like that's like the prime time of things, kind of like week 1 is for the actual NFL. So like for me, staying in football shape is like paying attention in January, paying attention in February, still finding things to talk about in March, April, May. Obviously post draft gets kind of hard, but then you have the mini camps and stuff. So I feel good. I feel like I got a lot of takes right in week 1. I was very happy with it. So I'm hoping that I can keep it going here and keep Neil in the non-pay window, the Ofer record here.
All right. Your best call during best ball season and your worst call so far. The one that you're most worried about of like players that you're the highest exposed to and the one that you're feeling the best about.
What I'm worried most about right now is probably Terry McLaurin. I took a lot of McLaurin as sort of the Jaden Daniels proxy bet. Jaden comes through, I think. I don't expect him to run 16 times every game, but certainly was a performance that I was happy with in terms of what he can do as a player and that fantasy upside. But the pass game work was not quite there as much as I want to see. The Kingsbury offense, the horizontal raid look very much in play. So worried about McLaurin, and Marshawn Lloyd's my highest exposed guy besides Daniels. A little bit worried about him. I know, Neil, you're in the bag too, but I'm really not worried about him. I feel like whatever we're going to get from him is going to be good when he's good to go. So that one, I like. It should worry me a little bit more, but I feel like Puka worries me more than Marshawn Lloyd does at twice the ownership.
Puka also a big concern for me. It's funny. I was talking with Jake earlier, and I told him I drafted so much Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm really worried about this. And then I went to get the screenshot to show him how much Marvin Harrison Jr. I drafted, and it was 9%. So I didn't take a lot of huge stands though. But yeah, only 9%. So not quite as bad as I thought it was with Marvin Harrison. Jake, you don't do as much best ball as myself or Spags. I think you got into it a little bit at the end. How are things going for you?
Yeah, I do still play a pretty good amount of best ball. I think with the way the spring football schedule kind of shakes out for me, I think it just makes a lot of sense for me to sort of backload my entries. So I get pretty much everything in the final few weeks here in August. I'd say things are looking pretty good. Looking at my top exposures, I drafted an ungodly amount of Demarcus Robinson, who is looking pretty hot after Puka Nacua ended up on IR. Also have a lot of Greg Dortch. Those are my two highest owned receivers across pretty much every platform. So I'm fairly happy with that. A guy that I am worried about, though, is Braylon Allen, who I was hoping would have at least some standalone value as the RB2 behind Breece Hall. Looks like Breece Hall is just going to play every single snap. So I'm sure we will mention him again on the cage match because he should be a pretty popular player in DFS this week.
Yep. Definitely Breece Hall looking pretty good here. We're going to start by reviewing our teams from last week. Jake will review his losing last place team first. I will then review the team that should have won second, and then Spags is gonna as the guest has to review the guest draft.
Shit on the CEO of the company's team.
Let's go shit on Scott's team. Jake, tell me what went wrong with your team here.
Yeah, well, let's start with what went right, which was Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans absolutely cooking the Washington pass defense. Baker was, popping as a pretty strong value overall, and Washington was a fantastic matchup. Rachaad White didn't exactly get the usage I was hoping for, was, pretty inefficient, but did make up for it with 6 receptions. Bijan had excellent usage. He was at, around a 90% snap share, didn't manage to convert it into many fantasy points. And as a whole, Atlanta was extremely disappointing. And, I think their offensive ineptitude is a big part of what killed me. Obviously, Darnell Mooney did absolutely nothing, and Bijan fell below his fantasy point expectation, which wasn't great. I thought I was looking good after Jalen Naylor hauled in his 1 target for a touchdown, but neither Noah Fant or Jonathan Taylor could really drive that over the top for me. And it is pretty disappointing because outside of Rachaad White, I feel like I drafted pretty great running backs in Jonathan Taylor and Bijan Robinson. Looking at the usage on Monday, it just didn't happen. And of course, the Cincinnati Bengals had to drop a dud in the defense spot as well. Only 2 points and just an embarrassing loss for the Bengals against New England.
Did I hear Rachaad White had elite usage and was inefficient? Whoever could have seen that coming from Rachaad White? Totally shocking there. All right. My team that should have won but didn't. CJ Stroud, somewhat disappointing, only 18.66. I was all in on this Houston stack. CJ Stroud, actually the stack overall pretty good. Nico Collins 20.7 fantasy points, Stephon Diggs 21.9. But overall, I mean, Chuba Hubbard was just like, he was one of the best point per dollar projections on the slate as of Wednesday last week. So at that time, he looked like he was a great point per dollar play, and I was like, all right, he's cheap, might as well. I kind of went for the value route. Team didn't work out really the way I wanted to, because I went for value early, and then Jake sniped me on Mike Evans. He was gonna be my next pick. Jake got Mike Evans from me, so that was kind of painful. So I ended up kind of having to adjust my approach and ended up going with CJ Stroud at quarterback when there was all the best plays as far as a 3-man contest last week were really the pay down options. We had so many great value options. So just didn't end up being quite the team that I was trying to get here. Josh Palmer only 3.5, obviously very disappointing. But the one that was the most surprising to me, honestly, was Chuba Hubbard of this group. I thought he was just going to get elite volume. All of the Dave Canales talk of, oh, we're going to run the ball so much, we're going to establish it so hard, you're going to see how much we want to establish the run. Chuba Hubbard ends up with 14 rushing yards, no catches.
Looked worse than Miles Sanders even, so you really crushed it with that pick.
Yeah, that did not go well. So, you live and you learn. I got my one loss out of the way for the season. It'll be all wins from here. Spags, what do you think of Scott Barrett's team?
So I see some good things up top. Jaden Daniels being the pick there. I support that immediately. Was at a good price tag last week. For this kind of game, I think you could have gone the Gardner Minshew route, played it safer for a true cash game play. But I think going to Jaden with a little more upside, knowing the rushing floor there, I'd say a good play by Scott. McLaughlin, Singletary, I feel like in general how I would play cash is following the ownership. I don't know that these two plays make a lot of sense for that one. Do none of you guys play? I see Tyreek here. None of you guys drafted Kamara? Am I missing him?
Correct. Nobody drafted Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, so like Kamara, I would think would be, an obvious play to go to here over these guys that Scott picked. They clearly had okay enough projections on him, okay enough roles that we knew from the preseason, so I could see where he's going with it, but doesn't necessarily feel like the plays I would go to if we do have Kamara available. Godwin, Hill, Drake London as receivers. I feel like these guys all made sense. Hill, one of the highest owned guys. Godwin, if you can't get Evans, I think made some PPR sense. A lot of talk of him being the Cooper Kupp in this new Liam Cohen offense. He's proven, I think that's going to be the case to some extent at least. Pitt's high owned guy. Ingram, double tight end. I guess I could see doing in a cashy kind of matchup, but bad pick with Ingram, it seems like in hindsight. And Vikings D getting that. I mean, if you get that in a cash game, you're probably going to cash in most cash games. So I think it's a good team by Scott. I don't know that it's like the cashiest lineup in the world, but it worked.
Yeah, it worked. We got a couple losses on the stream here today, but congrats to Scott for the week 1 win. He'll probably never come back because now he's like, all right, I got my win. I'm undefeated in the cage match. And Scott, being a coward, will never come back onto the show to give us another shot at him. But we will take another shot at beating our guest. Jake and I are going to take a shot at beating Spags independently. Three different teams going on here, but Spags as the guest. So Jake and I are flipping back and forth. Who goes first? Jake went first between the two of us last week. I go first between Jake and myself this week, but Spags, you get to choose which draft slot you want, 1, 2, or 3.
I would take the 101 here. I didn't get a lot of them in my best ball drafting throughout the year. Was under the field on my expected 101s. And yeah, I guess I would have picked CMC anyway. So I guess that kind of worked out. But here it's going to work out better for me. I'll take the 101.
All right. So we're going Spags first, then me, then Jake. It is a full snake draft. So we'll go snaking back around until we have all done, filled up our entire team. Have you thought about who you want with that 101 Spags?
I did my research in advance. I looked up some ownership projections from a couple sites. I did, but I came ready for this. So I'm playing cash, especially knowing Neil's winless right now. I got to keep him winless. So I would take the chalk RB of the week, Breece Hall, at a soft price tag, I think.
All right. Spags. I mean, that's a pretty easy, like the easiest, the best projection on the slate. I like that call. Hard to argue with Breece Hall as the 101. Taking the value there, taking the projection, I should say.
And also not Mason because there is still a faint shot CMC could play. So I am hedging a little bit against the fact that this is, this has to be evergreen right now. So I think one of you guys might have to absorb the risk on Mason a little bit more.
Yeah, that seems like it probably would be a good idea to absorb some of that risk. But what I'm going to do here is...
it would be a good idea, but Neil's going to go the opposite way.
I'm going to do something there. I'm going Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp against Arizona with no Puka Nacua, to me, is just... the floor is enormous for Cooper Kupp. Okay, here, I'm still in yours. Okay, I see. I think I just gotta eat Cooper Kupp. I'm believing in it this week. One of the better matchups you can possibly hope for. Now no Puka Nacua, so any worry that you have of Puka Nacua taking some volume from him, he's just 7,600, which is too cheap for Cooper Kupp's role. So I'm just gonna eat it. Go with a game that I bought a ton of for. Well, to me, it felt like a ton of the week 17 Arizona Los Angeles game for best ball. I was all in on that. I did draft a lot of Trey McBride. Jake saw, I promise. I drafted a lot of Trey McBride. So it was a game that I was very much in on. A game stack I tried to do a lot in best ball. Now we get it in week 2 for DFS. So I'm gonna try to eat up that game, Arizona versus the Rams. So I'll go Cooper Kupp. Jake, you get back-to-back picks now to start.
Yeah, so my first pick here is going to be Deebo Samuel. Right now, we're looking at a mid-range wide receiver 1 combined with a low-end RB3 if you assume Christian McCaffrey does not play. And I do not think he will, but I'm not quite brave enough to draft Jordan Mason here. I also see a pretty big drop-off in running back value after the RB3, who right now in our projections is Kyron Williams in terms of value. So he's going to be my other pick. I think I secure some good value there, and I think I can scoop up some cheaper guys later on in the draft.
Yeah, I don't love that because I was thinking about taking Kyron Williams as part of my full-on game stack. It was actually, I was considering between Kyron and Cooper Kupp. So hard to argue with Kyron being a good pick there. All right, Debo. Debo is an interesting one that I honestly probably should have thought about a little bit more. I like my pick, so I'm happy with my Kupp pick. But Debo, that is pretty interesting with McCaffrey likely out for this game. Debo theoretically should have a bigger role. All right, so I will. What do I want to do here? Yeah, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to eat that running back value because I think most likely McCaffrey misses this game. So I will take Jordan Mason. I'll take.
He wasn't coming back to you if you didn't. I was taking him with one of these. Yeah.
Yeah, I figured you would. Where is? Oh, there we go. Okay, 5,200. Yeah. I paid up for Cooper Kupp, had to get a little bit of value in there. I think Jordan Mason, Vikings defense, I'm hopeful that it is improved this year. They did really well against the Giants, obviously, but I can't read too much into that. I was sort of hopeful that it was going to be an improved defense anyway for my Vikings. I think, positive early signs, even if it was against the Giants. So, I don't think it's the best matchup in the world, but also the Jets were a terrible matchup for Jordan Mason. He just ate against the Jets. I do have the biggest concern with Jordan Mason is we might have Trent Williams out for this game. I don't think that's been confirmed, but I know that he, was kind of injured towards the end of the last game. So this might not feel as good if Trent Williams misses the game, but if Trent Williams ends up playing in this game, that Niners offensive line is good enough that you can just eat against any defense, I think. So I like Jordan Mason here, and then we will throw it back to Spags. Back-to-back picks now.
Yeah, Mason, I wish Mason to come back. I feel like the usage he had in that game, almost 30 touches, is kind of ridiculous for a guy who also really wasn't getting the CMC pass game work. So I think a good pick by Neil that I'm envious of. I'll go CeeDee Lamb for one of these. I think that he's a player that's going to be decently owned this week, high projection. Still had good usage in that Browns game, even though the fantasy points per target weren't there. The fantasy points overall in the game weren't there either. But Lamb, I think, a good pick overall this week for a cash game kind of format. And it's tough for me too, because I do like Amon-Ra, but I do think now we're at a price point where I cannot go his way. Looking at other RBs, Kamara on the other side would not be a bad thing. Need to save money at some point. I'm trying to game theory a little bit what you guys are going to do. We got, all right, tight end, Porta. All right, I'm going to go with another RB here. I am going to go Alvin Kamara. I think the price point is too appealing here. Being done at RB in a cash game kind of lineup, I think works. Don't mean to game stack this up with the New Orleans Dallas for cash game lineups. You usually don't want to do that. For this build, I'll do it because I think the RB looks pretty good.
Spags, before we move back to my pick, we're still figuring out what we're going to do with late swap. So I think we had determined that you can only late swap if a player is ruled inactive prior to the game.
Okay.
And you obviously can't take anybody that has been taken already by the other teams. Do you think you should just have the ability to late swap onto whoever you want outside of those parameters? I mean, I go back and forth because I'm like, man, you could have a huge advantage of just like you get the Jordan Mason or whatever, like the value guy who comes in and suddenly you have an awesome value to replace. If you had like a $5,200 receiver in your flex and you can swap that to Jordan Mason, that equivalent kind of value. It's like, man, you can kind of game the system. I think that's just the way we play it. Do you have any other ideas for us?
No, I think just a gentleman's agreement that you don't adjust it unless somebody's out, I think is fair. And a straight price swap to somebody that ideally is not on another team in the tournament, I think would feel fair, or in the room rather.
Yeah. Definitely can't do one that's in the room. That is the punishment, so you can't like game theory it and then just take
like Battle Royale style where it's like you get the highest ranked guy that's not already picked in the draft.
Yeah. Okay, good. We're all on the same page then. All right. So nice start here. Breece Hall, Alvin Kamara, CeeDee Lamb. Also, what do you do if you run out of money? You get to the point where like you don't have.
I have some cheap guys in mind here, I think, but I thought about that a little bit. I'm spending a little bit hefty to start, but we got some cheap guys. We'll get there.
All right. You're not worried about it.
No.
All right. Moving back to my pick, I have Jordan Mason and Cooper Kupp so far, and I am gonna go. I haven't decided yet. All right, let me think for a second. I have some thoughts about what I want to do. I just want to
It's a lot of pressure picking live on the spot like this. Like, it's hard for me to not like sit there and compartmentalize on my own and have to kind of talk through a pick more. It's difficult. It's more difficult than it might seem to the YouTube viewers out there.
I told
on a Wednesday with limited information, we're still not quite at the point where we've really dove into matchups a lot.
It's fully internalized, and yeah.
And I've started looking at the slate a little bit because I do work, but like I'm thinking about it through the lens of like how I'm doing my content more so than like how am I actually going to want to draft? Like, how do I contextualize this? Who do I want relative to the other players, as opposed to just like, oh yeah, this is a good play. So it's like I've started looking at the slate, but I haven't like looked at it to the extent that I will have by the time I'm doing a show on this slate on Friday. Like when I'm like really have drove in, it'd be a lot easier then, I think, when I've developed stronger opinions. But one thing that I know that I want on this slate is game stacking Rams Cardinals. Seems like Kyler Murray not too concerned about throwing the ball to Marvin Harrison Jr. I leaned in on Trey McBride during best ball season. I think Trey McBride is going to absolutely smash in this spot. Sign me up, Trey McBride. Come on down. All right, on to Jake. Another back-to-back picks.
Yeah, back-to-back picks here. I already grabbed Kyron and Debo, so I definitely like to go with at least one cheaper pick. And with the way things sit right now, there's a pretty clear top guy in terms of tight end value, and that would be Colby Parkinson, who actually led all tight ends in routes last week. You could quibble about the role, but the reality is every Ram is a value on this slate with no Puka Nacua. So he's going to be my first pick here. And then for my second pick, I view things as pretty flat at running back moving forward. I think I want to go... I'll take Jaden Daniels here. I want nothing to do with Daniel Jones or Justin Fields, and quarterback value really isn't great after Daniels. So yeah, Jaden Daniels, Colby Parkinson, feel pretty good about that.
Yep. Hard to argue with Jaden Daniels, who, depending on the projection source you look at, like the best projected quarterback on the slate. Some places it's a little bit over the board. Like I've seen him as low as like 8th or 10th or something like that some places, but I've seen him as the highest projected quarterback on the board. That seems right to me against the Giants. This feels like a great spot for Jaden Daniels, and you don't necessarily need to worry about stacking him up. So
yeah, 16 rush attempts last week is the 5th time ever a rookie quarterback has gone over 15 rush attempts in a game, and it's the 22nd most rush attempts by a quarterback all time. It's absolutely absurd rushing usage from Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, no, that's a solid pick once again. All right, now let me points per dollar. Who do I like here? I think I'm going to go. I know that I should be playing this like a cash game, and I'm just not ready to play this like a cash game right now. So,
I can tell.
Yeah. So I'm going to go with a guy that I've talked about a lot with some of my friends who are super into him. I'm going to lean more into this game a little bit. I am going to go with Tyler Johnson of the Rams. I think that he should have a significant role this week. I know that they've talked about it like still being DeMarcus Robinson is the wide receiver 2. Tyler Johnson might be fighting for the role on the Rams, but he was so good when he had an opportunity last week. I think that there's a possibility that he kind of steps into more of that, a significant role, like playing in the majority of snaps, running a ton of routes, and Stafford seemed to like him. So at 3,300 in a game environment that I'm trying to lean into, getting a little bit of value when I've already spent up, just paid 6,000 for a tight end. So kind of, inversing those prices in the ideal build. I'm just going to, go with the gut, going vibes based here a little bit.
It's interesting. I mean, yeah, the cheap Rams thing is definitely, I feel like somebody can get some ownership congregating on them. But I don't know if Tyler Johnson actually gets any real ownership. So I feel like he's interesting cash gameplay, probably will project well, but probably not have the ownership that makes you feel like you got to get into cash.
Yeah,
he's definitely not.
I think you could argue that DeMarcus Robinson has already sort of settled into that wide receiver 3 role, and that maybe Tyler Johnson is stepping more into the Puka Nacua targets.
Exactly. That's kind of the hope.
I don't know how much I buy that, but it is there.
Yeah.
I think Tyler Johnson, Whittington's going to come for some of that, I think, when they have the opportunity to see what he can do. Like, he almost had a touchdown that last game if it hadn't gotten called back.
Yeah, no, that is true. Jordan Whitney, was he a guy that you were super into in best ball Spags?
I didn't get there as much as I would have liked to because I was like, I just don't see how he gets on the field with young Puka Nacua there and Robinson cementing a role and Cooper Kupp, coming back in. So I was like, I really tried to avoid guys where I'm like, I don't think the draft capital necessarily matches up with the opportunity they're going to have to get there. And I didn't go there enough, I guess, at this point. I was more team Puka. I'd more than you, Neil. I had like 15%, 16%, because I just kind of kept scooping it around the turn. So I'm deeply exposed there, and I probably should have. When you're exposed that much for best ball, you should probably pivot a little bit to lever the other side. I just didn't lever the other side enough.
I mean, yeah, you feel bad about it when a player gets hurt, but when things work out, like there are certainly Jaden Daniels. I wish I had leaned into that more. Like he's one of those guys that I really liked him in best ball season, and then he ended up like I probably have 10-11%. I know that happened to you last year with Anthony Richardson. He was a great pick. Like all indications based on when he's played. Awesome pick last year, and then you only ended up playing 2 games. And I know you had a ton of Anthony Richardson last year, so hopefully some of our bigger stands actually work out this year. Or for those of you who are not cowards and actually make big stands, hopefully your stands work out a little bit better this year. But not this week. But not this week in DFS because I want to get a win here. Who are you going with in this back-to-back here, Spags?
All right, let's. I got to save some money somewhere. I think there's a really obvious defense. It's going to be chalky, but I don't know that I want to pay $3,300 for the Colts. I should probably just punt defense till the end and just take somebody cheap, but I kind of want to know how much money I'm going to have to work with. So I'll do Vikings D at 2,400 defense in cash. I don't think matters that much. I don't need to get a better projection on it. They're going to blitz at a high rate. Hopefully one FCMC in there. Maybe something can go weird, but I don't really want to play the Panthers D and I guess Cardinals D. Actually, Cardinals D versus the Rams. No, it doesn't make sense.
You want leverage on my team. Come on.
I'm playing tournament style again, just like you. No, let's go Vikings. Let's stick with the Vikings. Blitz heavy team. They could fall ass backwards into something. So Vikings D for 1 pick. And I got to think about the second one. Tight end, I feel like I'm just going to pay all the way down for, though this is not a bad price tag for this guy. I'm going to go Brock Bowers at tight end.
4,400 against Baltimore. All right. How much Isaiah Likely did you draft, Spags?
6.7%. So just enough to be respectable, but not enough to match the field on it. But I think, I like Likely. I think he's a strong player. I think the usage looked good. For Bowers, though, he and Likely are almost at the same price tag. Or actually, he's cheaper than Likely. Like Bowers' usage is going to be, I think, a lot more reliable than Likely's. That might be a bit of an idiot take by the time we get to week 2 and Likely's all over the place again. Like he got used like no tight end has been used in years, I feel like.
That was, I only had 4% Likely in best ball, so I'm very much hoping that was an outlier and it's not going to be like that all year. I will say, I remember distinctly after week 1 last year, we had Tyler Algier went off in week 1 over 20 fantasy points, and I was on a show on the old company, and I said, this is my prediction, and I asked, like, is this a hot take? I think that's going to be Tyler Algier's best game of the entire year, and everybody chat was like, yeah, that's crazy. Like, what are you talking about? That's not going to be his best game of the year. He's going to be awesome. He was so good in this game. Everybody always overreacts week 1 is my point. So I think like this, if this ends up being Isaiah Likely's best game of the year, I would not be surprised at all. I think there's a very good chance that game, and it was also a really good game. So like he could have a great season and that could still be his best game of the year, but I'm hopeful. I'm crossing my fingers that Isaiah Likely is not going to remain a thing, but I'm with you. I'm nervous about it. I think that he looked really good. Like, why would they take that away? And he was playing a ton with Mark Andrews. So regardless, he's going to be a slam dunk for where he was drafted, because he was going as though he was Mark Andrews' backup. And now it's like, oh, he's just on the field with Mark Andrews.
He was playing out wide. He was playing slot. Yeah. Like he was playing like we dream about tight ends being used. All the great rookies who came in last year and they didn't get that kind of usage. So it's weird to see, but I agree. Like the point being for me is like a guy like Bowers, I think I trust his protection for week 1 a lot more. Whereas Likely, I think there's going to be some 2-point weeks mixed in with, probably a good amount of 10s to 15s, probably not as many 30s.
Right.
Yeah, and can't forget, I mean, Bowers is the greatest tight end prospect of all time, and he's also the 3rd tight end ever in his first game to see more than 8 or more targets. So, really incredible stuff coming out of Bowers in week 1. I'm really excited about him.
Okay, so it's my pick again. I have a thought about what I'm going to do. Debating if it's too dumb. I don't think it's too dumb. I think I need the value. I'm going to go with wait, where is he? J.K. Dobbins. We saw J.K. Dobbins eat last week. Now he's going up against Carolina. Seems to be the guy getting the reps. Another huge mistake I made during best ball summer was a ton of Gus Edwards. Not a ton, probably under 10%, but I think over 8%, more than a lot of people did.
I've got double you on that too. So I'm Gus is not dead. Gus got the usage.
No.
Goal line work can be there. J.K. Dobbins' leg could fall off. We got outs.
We have plenty of outs for the season, but for this week against Carolina, J.K. Dobbins should get some usage. So hopefully he doesn't Chuba me and just be a complete dud like Chuba was last week when he was in what seemed like would be a good spot for him. So, all right, going J.K. Dobbins at running back. I'm up to 56.25 left per player. Feel like I'm in an okay spot here. Jake, you are up back-to-back picks. You have 54.20 remaining per player with 5 picks left. 4 picks left.
This is a bit of a tricky spot here. There are a lot of wide receivers that I like. The other positions are looking a bit more barren to me. I'll start off with Rashee Rice, who I think is pretty clearly the top pass catcher over in Kansas City. I mean, he looked absolutely awesome in week 1. The new slant god now that Michael Thomas is out of the league. And then I think I probably want to go running back here, looking for some value. You know what? I'm going to go with a fellow Bearcat, Jerome Ford, at just 5,900. The usage was pretty great. And, you know, there are massive offensive concerns here, massive concerns about Deshaun Watson and his rusty shoulder. But I think that's just going to lead to more checkdowns. And when you're getting, 80% of backfield carries, 70% of backfield targets, there's a variety of ways you can get there. So I really like the value with Jerome Ford, even though he's probably not a guy I'm going to be very excited to play in tournaments.
All right. So down to 48.33 left per pick with 3 picks left. Looks good. You don't have any stack right now with Jaden Daniels. How concerned are you about your lack of a stack, Jake?
So he threw 83 passing yards to non-running backs last week. He had the fewest attempts of more than 10 air yards of any player. So I wouldn't say I'm too worried. I think pairing him with a wide receiver, especially in this format, would actually be pretty risky.
Do you think that's a benefit to drafting him in this format? Like, is that part of the thesis of why you want to draft Jaden Daniels? Because you're like, I don't need to worry about getting a stacking partner later. Whereas you draft somebody else, suddenly you're like, okay, who can I jam in? Who can I force into this lineup? Now you can just do whatever you want.
Yeah. I mean, in 3-mans, I'm never too worried about stacking.
Yeah.
But, I do think it makes things a little bit more convenient. And I think Jaden Daniels is going to pretty clearly be the cash quarterback this week, but we'll see how industry projections end up shaking out.
Yeah. What is up, Jamie? What's up, TT? What's up, Mr. Popinski? Good to see you all. Thanks for hanging out with us. FBU says drop McLaughlin for Kobe Parkinson. I got Ferguson, need a tight end. McLaughlin is looking pretty damn good, especially we got Audric Estime on the IR now. McLaughlin was already kind of running as the running back 1 last week. How do you guys feel about this? Would you drop McLaughlin for Colby Parkinson in a season-long league?
I mean, Ferguson might play this week, right? So, I wouldn't necessarily overreact to that, but I think Parkinson's a good pickup in most leagues. I guess it depends if this guy's got 4 RBs who are better than McLaughlin. If that's the case, I think it's probably fine to drop him, but he's got a 50-50 share. He's got the third down work. So McLaughlin's not usually the back I would drop, but it just depends what that guy's roster looks like.
Yep, I think that is spot on. McLaughlin, not somebody who I would be on my drop list after last week. He had a better than expected first week, so definitely not somebody that I'm looking to drop. But Colby Parkinson definitely had a great week last week, better than I expected. So I guess kind of depends on your roster. All right, now who do I want? So I need a quarterback, a wide receiver, a flex, and a defense. I have 56.25 left per player, so I have saved some money. I don't know if it's a mistake. This is what I did last week. I saved a lot of money, and I'm debating whether it's smart or I'm.
My thought was get the best players early and just kind of figure out the rest, because that's what you would normally do in cash anyway. So that's how I approach it. But I think for the content part of it, the way you're drafting intelligently, even though you're not building a team intelligently.
Thank you, I guess. I don't know how to take that. All right. Well, fuck you too, Spags. Sorry, I forget. I'm not on my own YouTube channel. I don't know what the language rules here are at Fantasy Points.
I think you're good.
Okay, cool.
The new FUCK stat coming out for Fantasy Points.
Good point. With that said, I have some money left. I think I'm going to go with Amon-Ra St. Brown against Tampa. I feel like it's a place where he could just have a great game. I like the I mean, look, the opponent right here is first, so that scares me a little bit. I think that's because of the matchup last week was, didn't suit the wide receivers, so I'm not that worried.
Are you at all concerned about Jameson Williams being their new wide receiver 1?
I'm not. I mean, I am for best ball because that's another huge mistake. I mean, the list of mistakes I made in best ball is just so long. I never really bought in on JMO entirely. I have some, like I didn't full fade him, but some people were like super bullish on him. And I was like, yeah, but he's never like, he's been such a every year, like, oh, but when he comes in, he's going to have so much upside. And I was like, but he hasn't really done it yet. So I was not super in on JMO. So I'm very nervous about it from a best ball perspective. But week to week, I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is still a pretty good bet. Spags, what do you do with JMO?
I'm a fan of JMO. I had him ranked in the 70s in my rankings that I give to YouTube members as part of the joy of them giving me $5. I give them rankings back and then have to update them not nearly enough compared to what you actually have to have when drafting teams. But yeah, like I like JMO as a player. I think he was due for the breakout. You got to remember too that he missed injury time the first year, gambling time the second year, could even be in the facility. So I think that kind of stunts the growth. And you're normally expecting the guys to make the biggest leap. Year 1 to year 2, year 2 to year 3. So for him, his true year 3 is probably more like a real year 2. So like I think that's sort of how I feel about him. And actually, he was one guy where I took I was going through a little bit trying to figure out who I wanted to play. I'm going to add Jameson Williams to my lineup as well. He's 5,300 this week against Tampa Bay, who I don't think is actually good. Like Neil was saying, I think it's just a ranking because of the fact that they were so bad against Commanders' pass game was so bad against the Bucs last week. To me, it's not going to be the case this week. So I think JMO's a good play. And I know he has a Q tag on him. I feel like he's been practicing, but he's got a Q tag on him.
Practice in a limited capacity Wednesday due to an ankle injury. Interesting.
Oh, that'd be classic JMO to get hurt after like the first game. Everybody's like, "You look fantastic, man!" Like people who watched the charting. I think the FantasyPoints charting article this week was like Jameson Williams was like a different player. I think that's one of the quotes, and he's going to go out with an ankle injury immediately.
Well, this says it was probably due to being banged up in the first half, and he was able to close it out. So probably not a huge concern.
I hope so. Okay, I got one more pick here. I think I want to take one of my cheap guys. This is a cheap guy, so I'm making sure that I actually want to take this cheap guy first. Is this guy Neighbors first tag? All right, I'm pushing the salary a little bit hard right now. I'm actually going to go Malik Neighbors as well, going against the Washington secondary. I do have a cheap guy in mind, but I think I can fit him and my QB, or if not, I'll just kind of figure it out in the next pick. But like Neighbors in this matchup a lot, one thing people don't know or might have missed because they're not paying attention obsessively like some of us are the entire year. Malik Neighbors and Jaden Daniels at one point had a Rookie of the Year bet. They had to cancel. They talked about it to the media. They had like a $10,000 bet about who'd be Rookie of the Year. This week, they're going head-to-head. They're buddies from LSU. Wouldn't shock me if both sides kind of show up a little bit more, but Neighbors especially against the Commanders secondary, that sucks. They've already talked kind of squeaky wheel about they just need to get on the ball more. So I think Neighbors is a good pick in every format, but for this one especially.
Yeah, I would have thought about Neighbors if you had not taken him. I don't think I could have afforded him for what I want to do anyway, but definitely somebody that was on my radar against that Commanders secondary. You can't really ask for a much better matchup than the Commanders for a receiver. All right, so I have a pick. So I have just a quarterback, flex, and DST remaining. 4,800 left per player. Now let me look at the quarterbacks I want to consider. I'm not in the easiest position here, I don't think. All right. Wide receiver prices. It's a flex, so I can play wide receiver or running back. If I go cheap here. Higgins still not participating.
The ultimate cash game play, T. Higgins.
No, I'm not thinking about T. Higgins, to be clear. I'm thinking about
look at the rest of your lineup, Neil. It's possible that you were like T. Higgins really is the bow on top of this gift.
That is pretty fair. That is pretty fair. I'll give you that. I have to remember that I can't take players that you guys have too. That was another thing we were thinking about. We might want to punish that, Spags. Like if you do like name somebody that's been drafted to somebody else, there should be some sort of punishment. We couldn't figure out what we want it to be.
Neil, I cooked up a great spreadsheet so that we could avoid these issues.
You did. Which makes it, even more offensive when you take somebody else's player.
It hasn't happened here. We've all been locked in. We're all paying attention.
No,
the competition's high. We're doing our job.
Spreadsheet has helped me a lot, at least.
I have not been using the spreadsheet, if I'm being honest with you.
I'm just paying attention. I don't know. I didn't know there was a spreadsheet. I came in.
Yeah, I never even told
Spags. I was exactly like you last week. I said, if we simply pay attention, we got it. But then we all fucked up. Everyone made a glaring error last week. So it prompted me to create a spreadsheet.
Like, it wasn't that the touchdown was his only, man, he didn't do anything last week. I thought he was better than that.
Sounds like a Neil Orfield kind of player.
It does. A guy that I thought was better than he is. That's exactly my type.
Decent ADP on him though in best ball, so it's like that's where it goes.
He was a reasonable ADP. All right, we're getting down there in price now. I'm like, well, I guess we can find some cheaper receivers potentially. Ooh, do I want the Ass King? 1 of 5 targets last week.
Ooh, yeah, and he was the Ass King.
Well, yeah, the other 3 were what, 50-yard bombs that he didn't connect on?
Yeah.
Yeah, just
so one of those.
AR.
All right, I'm gonna think about that. I think I see a few values that I don't dislike. So maybe I'm gonna go get my defense first and then figure out pricing. Now, who do I want that defense to be?
Spags, while Neil figures this out, could you enlighten me on the Squirt Squad?
So basically, my YouTube channel, Splash Play, initially started as a podcast with me and Pete Overzet. Unfortunately, Football Outsiders stopped paying him to do the channel as well. So we kind of separated on our own. He's doing his own stuff, obviously doing world's better stuff on his own than we were doing. But I kind of forced Splash Play to become like my own little play area of best ball and fantasy football stuff. And basically part of that is giving the community a little bit of control. So because we have the splash emoji stuff, like that's the branding, they've called themselves the Squirt Squad. And I was like, well, I guess that's what they're going with. Then sure, who am I? Like when you get any sort of community engagement, Neil knows, like the Flannelverse, you're doing the branding. When you get any little bit of people clinch onto it, you're like, well, fuck, I guess it's just what it is now. They're the Squirt Squad, Cream Team, like Jake was saying on Twitter, also a valid team to be a part of as well. I'd say they go hand in hand, but yeah.
Hell yeah.
It's great. It's great branding. Squirt Squad. I feel like it fits. I mean, it's pretty great branding there. So
yeah, I don't know. It's not going to get me to the mainstream success I think I deserve. But
that might be true.
Whatever. We're niche on niche at this point. We're fine.
That is true. Yeah. No, I think you can get there with the Squirt Squad. I think it's fine. I'm going with the Broncos defense against Justin Fields. I think likely starting again is the latest I've seen. It sounded like Fields is going to start. Let me just double check that. I'm doing it either way because I already locked it in. But
Russ is limited in practice, but they've already said they're
preparing as though Fields will start. I always like a defense against Fields. I mean, guy who's willing to take a lot of sacks. That's I want to take that kind of defense where you just have built in 3 sacks in the game. I don't think he's a particularly great passer, maybe a little bit more opportunity for takeaways, and probably just going to be a low scoring output from the Steelers in general. So I think the Broncos are pretty solid cash game defense. That's what I will do. And then back to Spags, who I guess gets his final 2 picks. So just 4,400 left per player.
Jake with a double coming up.
Oh, it is. Oh, it's Jake. I went the wrong direction. My bad.
I mean, I'll cheat if you want. I guess
almost got ripped off an age match for charity.
That would have been.
Believe that. I'm just going to go with, for my first pick, I think the Saints defense, not necessarily because I think there's some great play, but because they open some doors for me salary-wise to get some of the guys that I want with my final picks here. Against Dallas, I don't have a ton of faith, but at 2,400, I think the price is right, and they are popping a bit in our projections. And then for my next pick, I think I want to go flex here. I view wide receivers still being pretty deep. I think I'm going to grab Jahmyr Gibbs, who basically played the exact same amount as David Montgomery, 51% snap share for Gibbs last week compared to 49% for Montgomery. But because targets are worth so much more than carries, Gibbs was at 19 expected fantasy points, I believe the 7th best workload on the week. And he's just too cheap and by far the highest total game of the main slate.
So now we all have parts of that Detroit offense. Of course, I picked Amon-Ra first. So if he doesn't go off, I'm going to be hurting. I guess salary is a component to it. Amon-Ra, the most expensive, but also I think a reasonable price. All right, so back to me. I'm at 5,800 left per pick. So now I gotta math it out. Like what could I do depending on who I pick at quarterback versus flex. I feel like I've got some solid options here. All right, so if I do that, I'm not going to tell you what I'm thinking. I'm just going to think it to myself so you don't snipe me.
Wow. That makes for
you have to give us the moments of slam
I know.
you.
I know. Great content.
No dead air on this stream, that's for sure.
Yeah, that is right.
I feel like with as much money as you have, I would like AR QB, unless you're trying to game me out because I'm not going to be able to afford AR.
Gosh, imagine completing 9 passes and still scoring 27 fantasy points. That's how good this
Pretty
guy
incredible.
is. Insane.
And have two of like at least one of the highlights of the year, like that back foot throw with the slip was just like, how many guys in the league can do that? Maybe him, Josh Allen, even.
Oh yeah, that was insane. You see, like the raw ability is just incredible. I watched every drop back on NFL Pro, and he missed a ton. Like if he ever puts it together, it's gonna be crazy.
NFL Pro is so great, by the way. Like just the full plug for them, like the greatest tool. I got it for free for a month with like some DK tournament. It was like, I don't know, this is gonna be that good compared to comparing it to the old all 22 stuff they had. And oh my god, it's like the best tool that's ever existed for watching video. Like I don't know the NFL if they're like litigious about running stuff on YouTube, but it would be perfect to run on like a YouTube stream and show people some clips and stuff. Like really worth the product if you want to go through and like get some analysis on these guys. Obviously, we need to plug NFL in their products. Right. They need the money really bad, but it is like one of the best spends I think you could have.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If you want to watch film, I think it's there's no better tool out there in the industry. It's basically like PFF Ultimate, which is $150,000 a year product that NFL teams buy, minus some of the statistical stuff that they have in PFF Ultimate. But if you combine NFL Pro and Fantasy Points data together, separate monitors, you basically have PFF Ultimate for a fraction of the cost, less than 1% of the cost. It's pretty wild.
That sounds like the play. All right, man, what I want to do, I feel like is not going to look pretty. Like it's the pricing is not really working out in a way where I'm getting players that I want to get on my team. As opposed
to the rest of your lineup.
Shut up, Spags. Do I anti-correlate here? Maybe I anti-correlate here. Screw it. I'm going Fields as my quarterback against the Broncos DST. And I'm not even mad about it. I'm totally fine. Fields at quarterback against Broncos DST. It's a good play. I don't care what you say. It's what you want to do in this contest.
This is what the first day of cash game school looks like.
It is a decision, I know, but look, I looked at the 2v2s I could do with the quarterbacks that I wanted to do that correlate for me, and they did not look particularly good. So I just said, you know what, I'm going to go with one of the better point per dollar quarterbacks on the slate. At least in some of the projection sources, looked like that was going to be a pretty good point per dollar play. Don't need to stack them up, so I think there's a little bit of a benefit to Fields. I'm not super excited about the way things are turning out here, but I'll survive it.
All right, so I'm up, right? So
you're up.
I'm looking at Luke McCaffrey. If I play Luke McCaffrey, my QB has to be Malik Willis, so that's not an option for me. I think though, maybe in a cash game if you're going to do it, that's the one place maybe you do it. But I will go instead Jordan Whittington as my flex at 3,500, which will give me 5,300 to play with for my final pick at QB. And the choices then get a little bit better. You got Derek Carr, Daniel Jones, Darnold, Levis. I don't have as clear of a direct. I mean, not that you want a correlation in a cash game. Carr, the motion, the Saints having almost 90% motion plays really stood out to me as like Clint Kubiak might be the boy genius we've been waiting for, that we've anointed so many guys in recent years. I'm going to go Derek Carr here at 5,300 to close out the roster.
Derek Carr closing out the roster for Spags. So Spags, your roster, you have Derek Carr, Breece Hall, Alvin Kamara. So you do have that correlation, Derek Carr with Alvin Kamara. CeeDee Lamb bring back as well on that one. You got J-Mo, Malik Neighbors, Brock Bowers, Jordan Whittington, Minnesota Vikings. Maybe we'll do this after. Maybe we'll finish out the draft and then we can each review our teams briefly, talk about how we're feeling about them. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All
right.
Yeah.
I have one final play. It is at the flex. I actually did not look at who's available at 6,200. I just knew that the lesser options were not players I wanted. All right, so let's see here. Man, Xavier Worthy was fun.
Mondre is not a bad pick at this point.
Yeah.
It's such crazy usage.
True. You're trying to don't try to sway me.
No, I mean, legit, I think
sneak my
Ramondre
team?
is like one of those picks that I feel like week one showed us exactly that, is kind of who I thought he would be. Seattle, tougher matchup, I think, than they had last week in Cincinnati, but I like Ramondre at that price. But if I had 6,200, I'd probably go Ramondre in the flex.
All right, good to know. Good to know. I'm not super inclined to bet on the Patriots in a not the best matchup against Seattle. I hear you.
Don't do it to spite me. Take Amari Cooper instead. Take Deshaun Watson throwing your cash game player balls.
God, yeah. I mean, I do have Godwin there. I have the Amon-Ra already. I can build, play into that game stack a little bit. So have some secondary stacks on the team if I want to.
Kelsey tight end double could work too. A lot of ownership going to Kelsey expected.
Yep. I don't hate the idea of playing Kelsey. I actually don't hate the idea of playing Aaron Jones. It's not a great matchup, but we saw some nice usage for Aaron Jones last week. Man, I've got a lot of great options here. None of whom I feel all that great about. You know what? I'm just going to believe in Spags and his thought process. I'll go with Ramondre. Hope that he gets, a couple extra catches in this game. PPR scams his way there. He did score a touchdown last week. Obviously, you can't count on that, especially when he's playing on New England, but the usage will be there. This is cash gamey. Sure. All right. I'll go Ramondre. So I finish. Well, I'll read off my team after. We'll let Jake finish us off. 5,500 wide receiver.
Yeah, I'm going to go Tyler Lockett here because he is the best projected player who fits for me that is not named Deontay Johnson, who I just can't make myself draft because every single week with Deontay, he finished 11th in expected fantasy points and 800,000th in actual fantasy points. So yeah, feel pretty good about Lockett. I thought the usage last week was solid. Was hoping Seattle would come out maybe a tad more pass heavy, but they might against a man heavy team in New England. So we'll see.
Best Ball Moderate says, I think someone won $1 million with Jameis and a defense bring back. If somebody can win $1 million with the quarterback and defense bring back, I can win the cage match. I think the 3-person cage match. So, it's possible. I think I can win this thing.
No, I think it would be theoretically easier to win a milli maker with the QB and defense than it would be to win a cash game, even though a 3-man cash game, obviously you could do whatever. But that was also Jameis in like his Bucks days where he was throwing for 600 air yards to Justin Watson and Brashad Perriman. So a lot of weird shit happened that year. I don't think will happen for your lineup necessarily this week.
All right. Well, I'll count on this being a 3-man that anything can happen, as you say. I guess I'm relying on that to take this one down to get back to even, which is still the plan. Things maybe didn't go exactly according to plan, but I think we'll get there anyway. But let's review our teams individually. Spags, we'll start with you. Derek Carr, Breece Hall, Alvin Kamara, CeeDee Lamb, JMO, Malik Neighbors, Brock Bowers, Jordan Whittington, Vikings defense. Left $0 on the table. That always feels good to use your whole salary when you're trying to create a cash lineup. How are you feeling about this lineup, Spags? Tell me what was your vision?
I'm really happy with the approach. I kind of went with an ownership forward approach initially. Then as we got deeper in, players kind of came off the board that either you guys took or just like couldn't get to now who might be high owned. So I think for me, going to guys that are pretty projectable, have good matchups, feels good. To get Bowers at 4,400 in a cash game, I feel really good about with what the state of tight end was in week one. Whittington, I wish he was just like 3K flat. Like I was kind of hoping I could find some 3K flat guy as the Johnny Munt I think Scott had in his lineup last week. But he wasn't 3K flat either. But like that's the DFS play you really want in a cash game, who just gives you enough of a projection, minimum salary, allows you to get good players around him. That didn't really exist. So happy with the build. I think Vikings D is the one part, but it's a defense that doesn't really matter. I think I win this one walking away, to be honest. No disrespect to Jake, much disrespect to Neil.
I just don't really appreciate see it with this
Chris.
team. I don't see this team beating my team. I just don't think you have enough good players. Doesn't have no. Let me take that back. I think the players are good. I don't think the vibes are good enough on this team. This isn't a team that I look at and I'm like, oh, I feel really good about the vibes of this team. Now I'll show you a team that I think does have good vibes. That would be the team that I just drafted. Now this team has all of the best vibes because I drafted a lot of the players who just did well last week. I just said, hey, they did well last week. What happened in week 1 is probably going to happen in week 2. That's what happened with Jordan Mason, J.K. Dobbins, Cooper Kupp, Tyler Johnson to an extent, Ramondre Stevenson. I just took a lot of the guys who did well last week, and that's just vibes-based drafting right there. We got the beautiful correlation, Justin Fields, Broncos defense. He'll probably get sacked, fumble, defensive fumble recovery for a touchdown will happen at some point during the game, and then Fields will just get angry. He will then run for 100 yards. He won't pass it much. He's just going to rush for 100 yards and a touchdown or two. So I think I like that correlation of Fields with the Denver defense. Jordan Mason, elite usage with Christian McCaffrey out last week. I think it's likely that Christian McCaffrey misses again this week. And even if he doesn't, maybe Jordan Mason's just better than Christian McCaffrey at this point. I mean, did you see how good he was last week? J.K. Dobbins apparently does have 2 legs and they both work. I had concerns about that. We saw pictures during the offseason. Legs were different sizes. I didn't want to draft him in best ball. Turns out it didn't matter. He's just really good. And now he's facing Carolina. Feel good about that. Yeah, I think this is a beautiful team. I leaned into that week 17 game stack, the Rams versus Cardinals, leaned into it here with some different players than I did during best ball season. Beautiful team. Lock. I'd say this is the lock. This is the week I get even. Jake, how do you feel about your team fighting for second?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I just want to say that I'm not sure what's worse, Neil playing a quarterback against an opposing defense or Spags taking the 0 on Whittington. Either way, I know that my team is going to win this week. Obviously, we got Jaden Daniels, the king of quarterback rushing, another 16 rush attempts coming his way in week 2, and I'm sure that'll lead to another 30-point fantasy performance with no wide receivers coming along with him. Of course, obviously already planned for that. We have Jerome Ford, who was a member of the only group of 5 team to ever make the college football playoff. So obviously had to pay my respects to a UC legend. Workload's great there. Got another fantastic workhorse in Kyron Williams. Got Deebo Samuel, who, like I said, mid-range wide receiver 1 combined with a low-end RB3 for as long as Christian McCaffrey is out. He could steal some goal line carries. Obviously going to get a ton of work in the pass game. Benefited, I think, a bit from Brandon Ayuk's holdout as well. Ayuk said he just really didn't feel right out there, still getting up to game speed. Really like that. Rashee Rice, number 1 wide receiver in Kansas City, the best offense in football. Tyler Lockett and the Saints defense were 2 picks that I felt a little lukewarm about, but they did help me fit in another great running back in Jahmyr Gibbs. And then, of course, the tight end everyone's going to want to play this week, Colby Parkinson, who, like I said, led all tight ends in routes and should see pretty good usage at 3,100.
Very nice. Jake, I know you were working all day on some articles. Can you tell me a little bit about the written work that you have coming up, or the work in general that you have coming up?
Yeah, so every week I'll do the DFS early look. That's, your first look at the DFS slate. That'll be up on Fantasy Points on Tuesdays. And then I'm also helping Scott out with his big slate breakdown article. That's 8 to 10,000 words, everything you need to know on the slate, the best cash game plays, best tournament plays, all of Scott's, kooky, crazy analysis. I'm helping him out with those blurbs, helping him put the pieces together for the slate breakdown. And then I'll also do, more shows in addition to this. On Friday, I got Cashing Points and the Underdog Drafter Party, where me and Ryan Heath draft some underdog battle royale teams. Neil, I know we'll have to have you on as a guest, and Chris, I mean, if you do any battle royale stuff, we'd love to have you on too. So
I had some good teams last week. Finished top 200 with a Jaden team, even with McLaurin on it. So I felt really good about nice. Battle royale game. I feel like there's just a few changes to your game you have to make, and you can sort of get a little better at it right away. So definitely a helpful thing to have you guys there doing it every week.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a lot of fun.
Jake, I don't know if you even saw it last week. I came in on Friday and saw the Fantasy Points like music playing in the chat, and I was like, "Oh hell yeah!" I just got here just in time for the show. Turned out it was the outro. I thought it was the intro, so I said LFG whatever, and gave it just as the show was closing. So,
you were literally.
So I missed it. Yeah, exactly. So I did not make it in to watch the show last week. I tried to make it to watch your show last week. I didn't try that hard. Otherwise, I would have been there. I had stuff going on. It's a Friday night, okay? But I would like to make it when I can.
8:30 on Fridays, Neil.
8:30. 8:30. See, that's East Coast time. I live in
Coastal
Central
Elite
time. So that was the whole. Coastal Elite time, 8:30. Real America time, that would be 7:30 is when that show starts on Fridays. I pulled up the data suite here. I did just want to give one shout out real quick. You can get any product at Fantasy Points. YouTube 25 is the promo code. You can get the data suite. You can get whatever, you can get the access to content, etc. All that stuff at Fantasy Points, different packages. If you use promo code YouTube 25, and I just pulled up the data suite here really quick, just to show you, if you hear people talking about ass all the time. It took me a minute to figure out where to find the ass stat. So I just wanted to show people before we end the show. It's under receiving separation by alignment. And then it's one of the columns that shows up here on the far left, separation score. That would be the total separation score. So if you want to take a look at some ass stats, you can find that here in the data suite. Just want to show that real quick before we end the show. Again, YouTube 25 to get 25% off anything. That's on the screen now. Nice job, Trey. To get anything from Fantasy Points. Spags, really appreciate you coming on the show. Drafting a second place team was a lot of fun. What do you have coming up? What can you? Where can people find you? Where can you find your stuff this week?
Yeah, so I mean, the main things for Fantasy Points wise, I'll have a column on prop betting coming up tomorrow. I do basically a mix of some of the best prop bets I like from the Fantasy Points prop tool, which is built with their projections, and it's been fun to pick that. Well, honestly, last week I got fucking smoked. Last week in the first column, I think I hit a McLaughlin over on his receptions. Everything else I think washed out because I went too ambitious. I took Jaden Daniels over 1.5 touchdowns, took McLaurin over 100 receiving yards. I'm like, I went with my best ball bets for week 1, which is never the thing to do. So this week I'm dialing in and like, but much like Neil was this week, and you saw the results that we got. I'm focused on winning this week, and it's going to go really well.
Good to hear.
Yeah, but that column comes out tomorrow. I'll have it done at some point. It'll probably be up, I think, Thursday night, if not Friday morning. And then Splash Play, my channel here on YouTube, I do every day, Monday to Friday at 11 a.m. Basically just doing different videos, showdown videos, like Neil does, but I look at different products, kind of show how the build looks if you're doing it for real. And then also I do the same thing for the main slate. I do some other stuff, best ball review show, weekly kind of ranking show thing I'm doing starting next week. So lots going on Splash Play on YouTube, so check it out. But the Fantasy Points column, please read that. Give that click so I look like I matter. When they're thinking about who to pay money to, they can do that.
Definitely check out Spags's Fantasy Points column. Check out Splash Play as well. Great content over there. Really enjoyed Spags's content this past summer. I do agree with Tyler. A little bit of false advertising. We didn't show enough ass on this channel, so apologies for those of you who came here for ass. We let you down. But also agree with Tyler.
Neil, you were on camera the whole time.
Oh, that's funny. Oh, that's pretty good. That's not bad. That's not bad. Tyler says, smash the like, y'all. Yeah, we're also trying to grow this channel. This channel is one of the fastest growing channels on YouTube, I think. The Fantasy Points channel, a lot of great content here. Please do subscribe to the Fantasy Points channel as well if you have not already done so. Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Spags. This was a lot of fun. I look forward to my lineup crushing yours this week. Thank you to everybody else for hanging out with us. Catch you later.
What? Why are you shaking your head? You're welcome.